Welcome to the Rustic Garden Homestead. This video is all about growing pumpkins. I want to give you some midsummer tips on really taking care of them so they make it till October. I mean, they look beautiful right now. We're getting tons of rain. They're growing really well. A cool thing about pumpkins is as the vine kind of spreads across the ground, it puts out anchor roots. So it's really using all this space to really support its growth. What usually comes into Maryland is powdery mildew, other fungal issues, and it can kill off the pumpkin pretty easily. So you want to take care of them now before there's even any flowers or pumpkins so that they stay strong through the humid temperature here in Maryland or maybe in your garden. But just take a look how beautiful these are. All planted by seed. I didn't use transplants. I'm in the process. You can see potatoes back there. Just did a video on that. Harvested everything, and I'm going to weed out the garden because the plan is for these pumpkins, there's some in the back too, to kind of take over this whole space, along with some watermelon plants. Again, they're going to crawl across the ground, they're going to set anchor roots, and they're going to really do well. But in my area, powdery mildew or downy mildew, some sort of mildew, will roll in and kill the plants off. So I need to protect them now. Beautiful pumpkin leaves. There are two plants here sprawling across the garden. There aren't a lot of flowers in here yet. First thing I'm going to do, well, first thing I did was harvest the potatoes. I'll be getting them out of here, weeding everything so that the pumpkins can grow nicely across the surface. There's some pumpkins back there. I'm using a trellis just to show you how you can gain some space by growing vertically. What I wanted to show you is what happens to the plants. As the vine is moving along the ground, and you can see all the flowers are going to start to form soon, it anchors itself down. Like, I can't pull this up, but I am, just to show you. So they get these anchor roots. This one just popped out, but that's an anchor root, and you can see them. Let me come over here. It broke, but you get the idea. So it's going to drop roots down, going to get a lot of moisture. The key to pumpkin success, plenty of water. We've had crazy rain here. They're loving it. So water your melons more often, or water your pumpkins and melons too, more often than you think. I will be covering feeding, watering, pest control, and spraying, throughout the video. But I wanted to just talk to you about the anchoring. So everywhere, just about where a leaf is going into the ground, you can see a connection right there going straight into the ground where I loosen the soil, grabbing the potatoes. There's a root. That's going to keep the plant nice and strong. So when you want to water the entire garden, not just the base where the pumpkins were planted. Biggest issue is downy mildew or powdery mildew will come and take these out. I also did find some squash bugs. All right, let's get to the care tips. It's been 7 days since the part of the video you just saw, and these are the pumpkins. They've grown a lot. We've had 2 days of a lot of rain, and that's what I wanted to stress. With all the anchor roots, the main roots are right in here. We'll talk about that in a second. But with all this rain, these plants are just growing like crazy. They're already growing out of the fenced-in area, and they've moved way down there. They were only to right about here, and then they've grown all the way out to here. They really accelerate in growth when you give them plenty of water. The warmth, yes, it's important. But if you ever notice when you're growing pumpkins and a lot of your other plants, when you get heavy rains, they really take off and grow. So one of the things that you want to do to ensure a lot of pumpkins and good-sized pumpkins is to water the whole garden. Again, I want to stress, you don't just water right here where the plants are. You want to soak the entire garden, and we'll be going over that. But I just wanted to show you what the growth is like just in 1 week. These were put in the ground on 6/16 or 6/18. I can't read my number. They've grown quite a bit. That's in about 6 weeks. These are going to take over this entire space. It's only 2 pumpkin plants. The other thing I get a lot of questions about is, how do I fertilize them? How do I feed them? So when I was setting up the planting hole, let's just say that we're going to go right in here. 1 big shovelful of compost, handful of any organic granular fertilizer, 1 or the other or both. Mix it well in, drop in your 3 seeds, thin it down to 1 or 2 plants, whatever you want to do. That's plenty for them to take off and get growing. There's no need to put compost down everywhere if your garden has been generally set up okay over the years. Like I put compost down in the spring. That's plenty of fertilizer for the pumpkins. Because they put in anchor roots that go down really far, they mine all the nutrients they need. What you really have to stay up on, and again, I'll stress one more time, is a lot of water. Keep them watered and they're gonna do extremely well. The next feeding I'm gonna do will be the water-soluble fertilizer when I see pumpkins starting to form. And I'm just gonna fill up, I'm not gonna do it now because they're not big enough yet, the pumpkins aren't there. But as soon as I see the pumpkins forming, I'm gonna fill up a 2-gallon container with any water-soluble fertilizer. Just follow the instructions. And I'm just gonna kind of water all the way down, putting the nutrients on the earth all around the pumpkins, and that's gonna be plenty of nutrients. You don't have to over-fertilize pumpkins. Pumpkins are going to send out a lot of side shoots. You can see them here, growing through the fence. In fact, this is my gate. That's how I get in here. I'm going to have to tuck those back in. You can cut these off. You can shape them, to the shape that you want. It's not going to hurt the plant. You don't want to overdo it. I tend to like to let them go, except I have to be able to get in here to tend to them. Weeded out most of the garden, letting the plants go. Next step, along with watering, which is key, spraying these with a anti-fungal is the next step. You don't want powdery mildew to come in and take these out. Okay, spraying. So I cleared out a path. I actually didn't cut any of the side shoots out. I just flipped them towards the center. I really want to see pumpkins forming before I do any pruning, but again, you can prune lightly if you want to. And I'm opening up my path right through here so that I can kind of tend the garden. Eventually, these are going to take over this whole space. Just got rid of the kale, remove some weeds, weed it down as much as you can. If you feel like your garden doesn't have a lot of nutrients in it, you could go ahead and scatter a couple handfuls of organic granular around or put some compost down. But again, like I was saying, you don't really need that if your garden space has been, pretty well amended. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you've just been taking care of it. So for the sprays, I'm using Daconil. That's a chemical. I don't mind using it on my pumpkins because I'm not gonna really eat those. They're for decoration. It's also early on. It's bigger fruit. I could wash it off. Use the chemical fertilizers as a tool. Don't use them if you don't want to. So for Daconil, it's waterproof. You wanna spray in the morning, later evening. You don't wanna be spraying really in direct heat. So what I first do is go in, and there's just so many leaves. These will definitely get powdery mildew. It comes every year. I get lots of rain. So I'm using the Daconil because I definitely get the disease, and it rains so much. If I'm using baking soda spray or other organic sprays, they wash off. And I just don't want to be applying them all the time. If I were going to eat the pumpkins, or maybe I was concerned, as we get into September, the powdery mildew goes away, the conditions of nature change, I would switch over maybe to baking soda, or I would just let it go. So any spray, chemical type or organic, whatever you want to use, everything's a chemical by the way, but you know what I mean. So once I get the top sprayed, I do want to go underneath and take the time to really spray all the leaves really well. Just get in, spray underneath there. And please subscribe and follow me. I'll show you how I harvest these pumpkins and do a little bit of care in September. The leaves are going to get really large. The leaves on top, you notice, are collecting the sun. A lot of the leaves down at the bottom don't get any sun. You could remove them if you want to. So I would go through with the Daconil, chemical type, human made, waterproof. I would spray this about every 14 days. Baking soda spray, 1 to 2 tablespoons of baking soda in a gallon of water. You spray the leaves like I just showed you. That changes the pH on the leaf and really makes it unhospitable, however you want to say it, for the powdery mildews, the downy mildews to take hold. But if it rains, you have to reapply. You're going to want to apply the baking soda spray probably every 7 days, maybe 10 days if you get no rain. But you want to stay up, at least here in Maryland, through probably mid-July towards the end of August with the sprays. The watering, as I said, key. keeping off the mildews, the fungus, really the second key. Fertilizing and feeding, you know, it's important if your garden's kind of neglected. Otherwise, just set it up like I told you. The other thing you want to do is you want to get in and inspect it for really pests, but you're mostly looking for possibly white flies on the undersides of the leaves. Luckily, I don't get them, or squash bugs. And you can see some squash bug eggs right there. So I will remove those. So you just want to turn the leaves, look around. If you find the eggs, let me go back to them. They look like that. Just remove that leaf. It's not going to hurt the plant. Get rid of the squash bug eggs. As far as chemical spraying, organic, not organic, for insects or dusting for insects, you're going to have a lot of flowers forming, and bees and pollinators are going to come in there. And any kind of dust, insect dust or insect spray, no matter what it is, kills good and bad insects. But I do want to get in there and put insect dust along the stems in different places just to kill off any insects that are crawling through there. I'm not overly worried, to be honest with you, of harming the good insects in this case. I need to kind of kill off the squash bugs, vine borers, issues that might come in, and I do that really from July 15th to about August 7th. I try and disrupt the life cycles of these insects. How do I do it? As it gets darker and the pollinating insects go away, I will go in and I will just put some dust. It could be spinosad organic, 7 dust not organic, and I would just dust the stem. The insects are going to crawl over it. I don't need to do it now because I did it a couple days ago. No flowers are forming. Keep it away from the flowers. The dust will just sit there. Come morning, if I feel like there's a lot of flowers or I'm worried about the good insects, I will just take my spray and wash it off. At night, the insects are going to crawl over that, kill them back. You can't stop the insects, you can't really stop the diseases, but you can really manage them down to the point that they don't affect your plants. Okay, I know, because some of you will ask. Here's an example of the stem dusting. I'll just do something like that. Every 3 feet, 2 feet, something like that. You know, just dropping the dust right onto the stem where the insects will crawl. If you're worried about harming, notice there aren't any flowers yet open. If you're worried about the pollinators, just rinse that off in the morning. So you would dust later evening, just something like that. A little bit on the ground too, they'll crawl over that. And then come the morning, 7, 8 a.m., rinse it away. The pumpkins on the ground, they've all been sprayed. And when you look at the leaves, they look pretty good. Nice and green. Nothing really on there, a little damage here and there, but they're very green. These are going to crawl on the ground, set anchor roots. I'm going to talk about that again in a second. This is another variety of pumpkin. Also put in at the same time, middle of June. So these have been growing 6 weeks. They're trellising up a cylinder. The reason that you want to trellis insects is, I said trellis insects because as I look up, right there are some squash bugs mating. So I'm gonna reach over gently and get rid of them. All right, so they're gone. So you want to be sensitive to the variety of the plant, because on the leaves, you see these markings, and this freaks a lot of people out. They think this is powdery mildew. Mildews do look a little bit like that color, but not in this pattern. This is just a normal pattern on this leaf. It doesn't rub off for whatever reason. That's just how it grows. And sometimes on squash, zucchini, pumpkins, melons, you notice different patterns on the leaves. So I'm just gonna spray anyway. If it was an issue, we'll be taking care of it. When you trellis upwards, you're doing that to save space. So instead of this whole plant being stretched out all the way over here, it grows up, uses the space, grows back down, and then it'll get onto the ground. And it's a way to grow your larger vines in a smaller space. What's not happening here is the vines aren't crawling on the ground setting anchor roots, which are gonna bring in more nutrients, more water, use the storage, as I said earlier in the video. So if this plant, say, gets a vine borer down where I put the seeds in, this whole vine's gonna die off, you know? So hopefully it survives. That's why I put the dust down. Survives until the vines hit the ground, new root systems form. And this way, if some sort of damage happens over there, we have other root systems here. Same thing in here. We're going to see my shadow in a second. Don't normally like that. If something happened where I planted the seeds, there are all these anchor roots throughout here to support the growth of the pumpkin. So I want to spray the plants here. Any spray you use, you want to do a test spray. First time using it. If it's organic, DIY, chemical type from the store, organic from the store, you want to spray a couple leaves, just like that. Wait 48 hours. If there's no damage, go ahead and spray. Test spraying is really important. So the other thing that Trellising does is it makes it really easy to get under your leaves and spray. It was easy for me to find the squash bugs that were reproducing right there, get rid of them, and it makes inspection of potential problems a lot easier. So I'm going to spray all the leaves, and then we'll go on to the next step. The name of the game is to really manage down the problems. I lifted up a couple of leaves. I can see squash bug eggs back there, which you're not going to be able to see. They're definitely present. I just showed you them on the other plant. Looking down here, I actually see one moving on this leaf. Let me grab it. And it's right there. Well, you won't be able to see it, but you can see it. Let's get it going. It's two of them again. So again, they're reproducing. We're going to disrupt that and get rid of them. That's what you really want to be doing, is inspecting your plants, so you need enough space to walk around just to reduce them. Getting rid of those 4 squash bugs has really probably reduced, easily 100 eggs coming into here. The other thing that I like to use, I'll link the video. I built this about 2 months ago. I put these under my squash and zucchini plants. The squash bugs, just like you saw, will crawl into here. They shelter. I go ahead, inspect this, probably every other day. Just bang it out onto there, remove any of the squash bugs that I have. And I've literally killed 57 squash bugs this way. And you just set it in there. Remember where you put it. They'll crawl in there, and you just probably, you want to put a lot of traps around. I'll put one right in here. You never know where they're going to be. But this will reduce the population, and it will cause less damage for the pumpkins. Generally speaking, you want about 100 days for your pumpkins to grow. So if you're, prepping the soil, putting in the seeds, you want about 100 days. So you could do July, August, September, and then end of October is 120 days. It's almost August. You still have time, but if your frost is really coming early in your area, the pumpkins probably won't, get to full size. So you might want to use a variety that produces full-size pumpkins maybe in 80 or 90 days, maybe some sort of bush variety. But you do want a good 100 days worth of growth. We're going to get to watering in a second, and I just want to show you an example of how to water. But right in here, you can see a cucumber beetle right in the center of the screen. I don't know how well it's in focus, but they come to my pumpkins. The insect dust that I put down on the stems will help control them. I also might put a little sprinkling of the dust right on here. Just follow the instructions. The cucumber beetles are really, really active, and they're going to crawl across the leaves at night. Crawling in dust, they're going to die off. You don't need to dust everything and get it into flowers and cause problems. Like you could put some right on there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Maybe 5 leaves. Leave the dust there. Protect the flowers. Decrease potential damage to the good insects. But the cucumber beetles are going to crawl right through there. See if I can grab that. Okay, that one's gone too. For leaf dusting, which is really good for beetles like the cucumber beetle, something like that. Some more right over there. And then another one right over here. There's no need to dust all the plants or get dust way down in there. A couple of leaves. Again, put it on in the evening, rinse it off in the morning. You'll take care of the cucumber beetles and you'll protect the beneficial insects. Watering. Depends on how much rain you get, but minimum, I would say you want to give a nice soaking to the ground. Let's just say that there's leaves here. And of course you want to water before you would put your sprays down. So water first and then hit them with the sprays. But I'm soaking the ground really well. Pumpkins don't really crack. Watermelons, you can see some over there. Sometimes if they pull water in too quickly, they do crack. But that would be one good soaking. And I wanted to show you in real time, like I am putting a lot of water in there. You would get in there, you can see some more squash bug eggs down there. Could have to really get in there tomorrow and remove all those leaves. You know, sometimes watering can be boring, but this is what I get asked most often. How much and how often do I water? And you get a good sense of the complete watering that I'm giving all the plants. Well, all parts of the plant, I should say. And let's just do that right here so you can again see just all the water that's pulling there. That's what's going to really help your pumpkin thrive and take off and be massive. So I think you get a good sense. I would go ahead and do that through, you know, the whole plant everywhere. Once a week is probably plenty. You know, if it's really hot, you're not getting any rain, maybe twice a week. But the water is going to make all the difference. Just want to do a quick recap on fertilizing. If your garden is pretty well managed with compost and you feed it and you put in organic granular and stuff, there's probably enough fertilizer there. If there isn't, or you feel like there's not, scatter some organic granular across the space where the pumpkins are going to sprawl. Maybe scatter some compost. You don't have to do both, one or the other. At the planting hole, shovel full of compost, handful of organic granular, any type is fine, doesn't matter what you use. Mix it through, put in your seeds. At that point, maybe hit it with a water-soluble fertilizer. This way the plants are getting well established. Then you just let them sprawl. I'm really not going to do anything feeding-wise until I start seeing pumpkins form. And then I'm just going to get my 2-gallon watering can, fill it full of water, and just follow the instructions on my fertilizer. I use AgroThrive. It's a wonderful organic fertilizer. Check out the video description if you want to use that. And I'm just going to pour, well, let's just recap real quick. If it's time to water the entire plant, I would put the water-soluble fertilizer down first and then water on top of that. Just let it mix up and then seep into the ground, and it'll be fine that way. You don't have to do it that way if you don't want to, but that's what I would recommend. So I would go ahead, I see pumpkins forming, want to give them a mid-season, midsummer boost, and I'm just going to pour just slowly down the line, the water-soluble, just something like that. You can't really mess it up. You don't need to pour a whole gallon in one spot is my point. And then you just go down, get the fertilizer in there, water it, you're good to go. Stay up on the watering. You're going to like how your pumpkins look this year. And again, if we're going to do a full recap, spray every 7 to 14 days, depending on what product you're using. Put the insect dust down as needed. Inspect for different problems. Maybe use the squash bug traps. You know, do your best just to manage the problems down. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. I sell tomato and pepper seeds for $1.75 a pack. All other seeds are only $1.50. I've been growing pumpkins for a good 10 years, a good quantity of them, and I just wanted to try and get in one video the tips that I use that really gets me a nice pumpkin harvest every year. Stay up on the watering, use the anti-fungals. You're gonna like what you grow. Thanks for watching.